Oh, that's okay. Paul Verhoeven, your new film Elle has gotten some of the best reviews of your career, and some people even called it the best movie of your career. What do you think when you hear that kind of praise?
I'm very glad.
Hmm.
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, there has been other movies that have been successful, and others were not. And in this case, which is a movie that is what you could call certainly controversial, that basically that the reviews are positive in general is of course very pleasant. Yeah, sure. It's better than the reactions I got on Showgirls.
Well, it's certainly a film that really affects people who see it, whether positively or negatively. It elicits a strong response for them. Why do you think that is exactly?
I think it's because it goes into unknown territory. I think what appeals or perhaps even distracts or upsets people is that it is not, let's say, um, that this story doesn't develop in a way that is common, I would say, to American filmmaking. As you know, this is a movie about a woman that gets raped by a masked intruder, and she tries to figure out, among other things that she's doing, in fact, she tries to figure out who was the man that raped her, and she finds out at the end of the second act. She identifies the rapist, and then the third act in would have been or should have been, I would say, in American, let's say, filmmaking grammar, that she would take revenge. And that would be normal, isn't it? I mean, she's raped, she finds out who did it, revenge, third act, revenge. And the movie doesn't do that. The movie goes really in a different direction. In fact, you could say even in the opposite direction. And I think that is upsetting perhaps to people, and on the other side, it's liberating because you see here a woman that takes care of herself, that refuses to be a victim, that is really, even if when she tells her friends, seen in a restaurant, that she says, "I guess I got raped." I mean, she phrases it already in a kind of an abstract way, and then when she feels that the people on the table basically are shocked and show compassion, she stops that and says, "Okay, enough said. Let's order dinner." So she refuses to be a victim herself, and she refuses to be seen as a victim, and she is in full control of herself. It's a woman that relies on her own abilities and strengths and intelligence, and gets through this whole thing, and you could say, and ultimately wins, if you put it in these terms, and I think that it's very unusual. The development, the character is not even trying to be sympathetic. What Isabelle Huppert plays, the character of Michelle, might already be controversial. She is treating and with people in a way that you won't see in an American movie, and all that stuff is as liberating as it is probably offensive. And so that would be the reason that people, I mean, in general, look at the movie and react in a positive way, but there are certainly people that have been, let's say, shocked and disturbed and irritated and whatever by the movie. But that's okay.
Right.
I see it in a different way. I made it because I thought it was a wonderful, interesting character study of a woman that doesn't need anybody, and certainly not men, to get where she wants to be.
Right. And as I understand it, it's based on a French novel, and initially the screenplay was adapted to take place in the United States. But when you came aboard, you said we have to shoot this in France. Can you talk about?
No, not on the contrary, I would say. When basically I came to the project, it was clear that we were going to make an American movie.
Okay.
Realized that the producer, Said Ben Said, had been working already before this movie with Brian De Palma in a movie called Passion, with Cronenberg in Maps of the Stars, and with Polanski in Carnage. So, I mean, this was a producer that had been working in with American stars and in English. And the original idea, me living in Los Angeles and being, let's say, a mostly last 20 years American film director, it was clear that we would make an American movie. So when I said yes to the project, reading the French novel, the first thing we did was translate the book in English. Okay. And then I went and selected an American scriptwriter, David Burke, that I knew from another movie, and basically felt that was a really talented man. I started to work with him to set up the script, and then he wrote it. So we were really moving, we were relocating the whole story from Paris to an American city in the north. So we were thinking Chicago or Boston or even Seattle, that it would all, everything was resituated in American culture, with American, should be with American actors, American crew, American, etc. And then we found out, after trying to make it as an American movie, with that script in our hands, that nobody, neither financially, like in co-production, but also, and more importantly, we could not find an American A-list actress that wanted to do it. So it was only after trying for a couple of months to make this movie an American movie, Said called me and said, well, sorry, we are not getting anywhere. We have to go back to Paris and make the movie in French with French actors and actresses. And then, of course, then I said, okay, I'll do that. And of course, I knew that already out of the months before. I knew that Isabelle Huppert wanted to do the movie already before I had ever read the book. So when we decided to go back to Paris, the next thing when I said yes to that, the next minute he was, Said called Isabelle Huppert and said, well, we made a mistake. We thought we might make an American movie. Didn't work so well. And so we're back to France. And of course, we want you. And so, and she said immediately yes, and was, I mean, I think she was of course very happy that we failed to do it as an American movie, because she had wanted to do it in the beginning already, as I said, before me, and so ultimately it became a French movie. Because of the difficulties that we encountered in the United States to cast this movie, or even co-finance it.
Right. Well, there's certainly an American film feel to it.
There is. I've said it is a really a French movie. I hear also from French people, but I think they might not be aware that it was a French movie, but seen through an American filter. I would call it. The filter being David Burke and me looking originally at the movie in a more American way, which would be like, if you compare a bit in general, of course, this generalization, the difference between American movies and say European, especially French movies, you see, of course, that in general, in American movies, the plot is more dominant, structure is more dominant, and let's say a knowledge basically of first act, second act, and third act is very American. And if you look at top French movie of European movies, I should say, like La Dolce Vita or and others, then of course you notice that they look at these movies in a different way, more like a symphony, more like music that goes, let's say, as a flow. American movies are really much more structurally plotted. And I think by working with an American scriptwriter, we got the best of two worlds. We got an American filter on a French movie that feels French, but underneath is seen structurally as an American movie.
Right. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about working with Isabelle Huppert, this wonderful, legendary French actress who's still going strong. And what was that collaboration like between the two of you?
Well, yeah, we have been talking about that in other interviews here and abroad, of course, because we talked very little about the story itself. We had a feeling that we didn't just have to discuss the character, that we didn't have to discuss the development of the character. We spent a lot of time together, but it was always about, let's say, the exterior of the character Michelle. What kind of dresses, what kind of colors she would favor, what kind of shoes, what kind of makeup. And we discussed all the choreography of the what you call in French the mise en scène, the staging, how the actors move through the scene when they basically get up and get down and sit, and how they, in what direction they talking, etc. We discussed that all in the morning, on the set, but we really never discussed the development or even the character of Michelle. Of the protagonist. I think Isabelle and I had let's say the intuition we had the same intuition about the character. I think we didn't have to discuss it. When she went to the set in the morning, before shooting, I would go to her and be in her makeup room while she was made up, and basically would talk to her 5 minutes, 7 minutes, about what we were going to do that day and what would be the sequence of events and this and that. And then we would go to the set and we would just shoot it, shoot the script as it was written, and without discussing really any psychology at all. Before we started to shoot the movie, what we had done, we had spent, Isabelle and I and another friend, writer, director, we had spent a lot of time on the dialogue, because the dialogue had been, of course, taken from the French, translated into English, and then was retranslated in French again. And so we felt that there might be a certain stiffness, and so we went to all the dialogue of everybody, but mostly about Michelle's character, and basically adapted a little bit, if she would say this or that and stuff like that. That we did, but never talking about the psychology of the character and why she really would do this and that. And I think Isabelle Huppert, when she was shooting it, and she has said so many times afterwards, that she went to the set and let herself go into that character without knowing exactly where it would bring her. Yeah, of course, she would stay within the parameters of the script, but her interpretation would be extremely free, and I would give her all, let's say, freedom to interpret the scene, staying close to the script and using the dialogue of the script really was, but that's her emotional, let's say, input. We didn't discuss that really. She did that from the first moment, from the first shot of the movie. She was there. The character was there, and I didn't have to say anything. I feel that everything that I would say would not make it better. I feel that this is an actress that you should really let go and give all the freedom possible, because she added so much to the movie, and this movie should have been made with Isabelle Huppert. If Isabelle Huppert, I've said so before, as Isabelle Huppert would not have existed, this movie should not have been shot. That's how I feel now. In retrospect, now after this, let's say, false start in the United States, being forced to go back to France and falling into the hands, you could say, of Isabelle Huppert was the best thing that could happen ever.
Absolutely. Stylistically, what was your approach to the material? I mean, a lot of people have described it as Hitchcockian. Some people have described it as being like Michael Haneke. What was your stylistic approach? Oh,
I'm an admirer of Haneke, and sometimes I try to do a Haneke shot where there's a long shot where the camera doesn't move, but I gave up that, you know. So I tried it once or twice, and then I announced it on the set we're going to do a Haneke shot, but in retrospect we didn't do it in any way. So I mean that was more, let's say, a joke, because she had been working with Haneke several times, you know. So it was, and I know, and I admire Haneke. I like his. I mean, I would never be somebody like Haneke. I wouldn't be able to use a style like Haneke. I use much more editing a la Hitchcock than Haneke would ever do. But I mean, still, what he does works too in a really great way. So. But like I admire every movie, and certainly the big 3-4 movies that David Lean did, included Lawrence and Zhivago and River Kwai. I'm a big fan. I respect enormously his work. I studied his work, but in fact, I will never be David Lean. The person that is closest to me in filmmaking has always been Alfred Hitchcock. But in this case, I think I mixed Alfred Hitchcock with Buñuel. A little bit. I mean, so I think that's a little bit how I see the situation. And for the rest, it's really me, you know, me being going really into unknown directions again, and of course making things that are controversial and that people will talk about. And I mean, I that's not something that I set up to do, but I refuse to censor myself. If I think it should be that way, I'll film it that way. Knowing vaguely that it might be controversial, politically incorrect, might be, let's say, people make people angry, but I would not change it because of that. I would just say, but that's how I see it. This is what the scene should be. This is my view as an artist, and basically I hope you can participate. But so what I say, I don't censor myself ever, you know. Even if it's dangerous, I would do it anyhow. Mm-hmm. So that's the style I used, and for the rest I used 2 cameras that were basically equally important. So it's not an A camera, the main camera, and the B camera is for a little bit for the rest. I found, let's say, with Stéphane Fontaine, we found somebody that's also a DP that could be using the other camera, what you would call the B camera, was also an A camera. So I shot it all handheld with the Red Dragon cameras, and in a very improvised style. We would discuss the scenes a little bit beforehand, and we would basically go from shot to shot, and basically using these 2 cameras nearly sometimes in a dialectical way, opposite or very close together. I mean, so we shot it in a very, very loose way without ever using a tripod or whatever. It was always like on the handhold, is it? You put on your shoulder, and then you hold 2 bars here, and then you can do this and this. So you are like these kind of things, which you cannot do with a Steadicam, because the Steadicam refuses to do this. You know, Steadicam, you have to do this and this. But in with the, if you put it on your shoulder, you can do this and this and this. I mean, that is possible, you know. And so we shot it that way. And I had a wonderful DP, Stéphane Fontaine, and his second, let's say the other A camera that Mathieu did basically is really as important as the A camera. We had a great crew, and I shot it in a very, as I said, very loose style. Yeah. Right. Improvising a lot. I had, yes, action scenes, of course, the rape scenes, I storyboarded precisely because it can be dangerous and stuff, the falling and all that stuff that happens there. But all the other stuff, in the morning, I would make some notes and say, oh, perhaps this and that. I would give it to the DP, both DPs, and then we started shooting, and then we changed it and whatever. So it was, let's say, a loose interpretation of what was in the script.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Verhoeven, I wish I could keep talking to you because this is a master class in filmmaking, but I know you've got to go. I just want to say congratulations on the film, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It was a real pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure too for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.